practice in the age of COVID. So even though we're in COVID, we see the end of the light of the tunnel, but really it might be another year or more. But I love the fact that Dr. Buford is here with us tonight. I will introduce him in a minute. I actually have one of his books, and this is To Eat, Drink, and Heal. So anybody getting any kind of procedures at all, you need to have this. And it's the art and science of surgical nutrition. So it is something that everybody should read and understand. And I'm sure it's probably even good for any kind of service that you have done where you could possibly get, swollen or bruised. And his new book, I'm excited to announce, I don't know if he's actually even announced it yet, is Boob Job Bible. So that should be really interesting. And I like the catchy title. I think it's a great title. I think a lot of people are going to want to read that. We even might have some men wanting to read it. So if you have a plan, you have to work your plan in today's day and age. And, we discussed earlier, you have to know who your patients are. And maybe you need to take a closer look. Get the magnifying glass out. It's time. You need to do that. So in time of crisis, sometimes you have to take some new direction and have some new information, and maybe change up your staff, maybe change up your menu, add new profit centers. So there's lots of things you'll learn tonight in our conversation with Dr. Buford. And so there is at the end a survey. We would love you to fill it out. Any questions you have, you could send at any time. We love any of your suggestions. We do have a downloadable email that you'll get if you're on the Zoom. And if not, then you can go on to beautifulforever.com and ask us for one of the download articles that have been published. And don't forget to complete your survey and to let us know how we did tonight for you. And if there's any other challenges that you have, we have an open series discussions in 2021. And I think it's very important that we have open discussions and that you have open discussions with your staff. So that's part of the reason that we're doing these Facebook Lives and these Zoom meetings with some key opinion leaders. So I would like to more formally introduce our guest, Dr. Gregory Buford. And he's a board certified plastic surgeon. He's located in Englewood, Colorado. And he's personally performed over 6,000 procedures. That's with facelift products, as well as all of Allergan and a Diamond, of course, provider. And in addition, he's nationally recognized as a master trainer. And we have been on a lot of panels together. He's also a speaker and a trainer and an educator and a consultant for many product lines, as you can see, and equipment. And he's been recognized in the media for his plastic surgery expertise, which is amazing. So we'll have to come out and visit you. So Dr. Buford is also the author of Business and the Beauty in the Business, as well as Eat, Drink, and Heal, and the Art of Science of Surgical Nutrition, which I showed you. So I'm very excited to have him here. We don't have the new book out yet, but that should be out any time now. And so I'm excited to hear your pearls and to share some time with you tonight with our audience.
Well, thanks for having me on. I mean, I think you and I have had some very enlightening conversations over the years. Speaking on the similar panels and so forth, and so I've learned a lot from you as well. So it's an honor to be on this podcast tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a long time that we know each other, and I haven't seen you at a show, but I'm glad to see you here on Zoom.
Right.
None of us have been at too many trade shows lately anyway. So when you talk about, marketing your aesthetic practice in COVID times, how do you see it now, and how do you see it, moving forward?
So, we could have a whole podcast on that discussion. And I think that, as you and I have had this conversation before, we and a lot of other business, I mean, pretty much worldwide, we're caught in this maelstrom of sudden change. I mean, this wasn't something where we said, we're going to change our practice, how we practice, our protocols, our processes, and so forth, within the next 6 months. It was all of a sudden, boom, this is on us. We had to take it very seriously. We were personally shut down for about 2 months. So during that, I really had to do some soul searching. I had to look and say, why is it that I do what I do in my practice? Why do I run my practice in a certain way? And, moving forward, things may get back to normal. In reality, I don't think they're ever going to get back to the normality that we had before COVID. But we really had to all of us had to do some soul searching and say, what is it that we need to hang on to? What are the protocols and processes that, that will persist through this? And what do we also have to be able to pivot? What are we able to shift in? And in doing that, we've really changed our focus around. We can talk about all different kinds of ways that we've done this, but one of the ways is being able to use telepresence, for example. And again, I think you and I have had this conversation before that, telepresence in the past, I mean, we used it more as a novelty. We used it and we said, if you can't come into practice, either you're too busy or you're 5-6 hours away or whatever, we'll see you as a telemedicine patient, as a virtual consult. Well, all of a sudden COVID came along and boom, that was the only way we could see patients. We couldn't see patients, in person. So we actually had to really look at this. And so what I did is during COVID, when we were, again, was shut down, I know I keep saying the same thing, but we were at home. First thing I did is I called my buddies. I called my peers that, that I knew that had a really good virtual presence. And I said, how are you doing it? What does really work for you? What is not? So I always ask people that are smarter than me. And from that, then I developed a platform online, work with my website company, work with my digital marketing director, and we were able to put that up. And honestly, it's now something that's been integrated into the practice in such a way that patients actually really enjoy this. We can screen patients, pretty quickly. We can identify, are they a good patient for the practice? They can identify, are we a good, fit for them? We can save them time. So there's a lot of things I think moving forward. This is one of the many ways in which COVID has really kind of changed how we reach patients. Now, how we market, that's a whole different thing as well too, because during COVID, we had to be very sensitive, not in a superficial way, but really understand that, what we're doing is elective. It's all elective. If people don't get their Botox tomorrow or their filler, sorry to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you'll still survive. I mean, personally, when COVID lifted, I don't know about you, Cheryl, but that was one of the first things that I did. I went back and got my Botox. I washed my car, I got my Botox, and I cut my hair. 3 things, not necessarily in that order, but we had to, back to the marketing though, we had to be very cognizant of the fact that, we're talking about selling something that is completely 100% elective. And here there are people that are, not being able to put food on the table. So we had to be very, very understanding and, and very compassionate about that. But at the same time, those of us, were very proactive. We didn't stop marketing. We just changed the way we marketed. And we tried to do, as a lot of companies did, is we tried to think about how could we best reach the patient, but how could we reach our potential patients in such a way that we could be compassionate, supportive, and really, really listen to them, not just say, hey, bye, in a time that, again, they might not have enough food, money for food on the table. So, the marketing was, in our practice, really shifted a lot as well too. And we've kind of carried forward with that.
Did you do a lot of video marketing? Were you on talking to your patients?
Yeah, and actually it's funny. I just did a podcast on that about a week ago. I actually love video marketing. I hate the funniest thing in the world, and I'm sure you probably agree with me. I hate seeing myself on camera. I mean, I absolutely hate it. I hate hearing my voice. I think I look like a goofball. Yeah. I've been told I have a great face for radio, so I'll stay on radio.
Oh,
But
that's not nice.
yeah. But I really love doing video. Why do I love doing video? Because you get this back and forth, you get this give and take. When you're on radio, all you have is your voice. When you're on video, people can actually identify with you. They can actually see, what type of person are you? Do you have a sense of humor? Are you really stiff? What have you? So I think that video marketing I would encourage anyone to do that. The other thing I would tell you, and this is one thing that I learned, I'll stop, I'll blink, I'll stutter or what have you. Don't take those out of your video. Keep the videos actually raw, because if I come on and say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Gregory Buford, board certified plastic surgeon, blah, 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 blah," and I look scripted, people are going to look at me like you're an idiot. You're reading off a teleprompter. That's not really you. And maybe that's even an actor playing you. Who knows? But when you come on there and say, "Oh, God, I'm sorry, I screwed up that line," but whatever, people look at you and go, "Oh, you know what? He's human like I am. Wow, that's really pretty cool." I mean, he's a plastic surgeon, but he doesn't come across really stiff. I try to really show who I am, whether it's being a little bit snarky at times or cynical at times. I want patients to actually see that, because when they come in the office, what they're going to see is that's who I am. You can tell tonight. I mean, Cheryl looks amazing. I mean, I have my scrubs on. I've got my little fake backdrop. Uh, so I try to make it look as professional as possible, but I also try to make it look as human as possible. And that's something that I think that video marketing really has a lot of potential for. And it gives patients and potential patients a lot more of an idea of who you are before they come into practice, that's something that, plain copy on a page, a newspaper article or a magazine article, and God bless the magazines. I mean, I do a lot of magazine interviews, but in a magazine, it's static. It's not dynamic, in this kind of interaction. I mean, I love doing podcasts because I think it enables me to really kind of get out my true personality and to really have fun. And Cheryl, I mean, you and I, like I said, we've talked, numerous times. So this doesn't feel stuffy or anything like that. It's just like you're kind of sitting across from me. That's the kind of dialogue that I think consumers like to see. They don't like to say, well, this high stilted, whatever nonsense. Too many people on podcasts take themselves too seriously. I mean, get out there. One of my favorite podcasts, and people either love him or hate him. I love Joe Rogan. Okay. I mean, you either love him or you hate him, with all his 4-letter words, with all his cut to the chase, right in your face. I love him because that's who he is. He's not trying to play someone. That's who Joe Rogan is. And there's a lot of other podcasts out there as well too, and video series where they're engaging because you really see the person behind the name, the figure, the talking head, so to speak. So yeah, to answer your question a long-winded way, I absolutely love video marketing.
And you're good at it. I mean, you're like a natural. Talking to
Oh,
you, whether it's on the phone or talking to you on a webinar like tonight, you're a natural. And by the way, you do look very good and you are very handsome. So I don't know who told you that, but whoever it is, they weren't.
it's my Zoom filter.
And when you talked about your consults online, you're doing
Right.
them via computer. Some of these people are not yet patients of yours, and there's a lot of competition out there. So how do
Right.
you handle charging for? Do you call it a consult? Do you call it an introduction? What do you call it when somebody just calls you randomly?
Right. So, I mean, so we actually, when we first started, we were charging, and then we looked at it and we said, you know what, we're gonna try a month or two when we're not charging. I don't know the best way to do that. There's certainly arguments on both sides. Why you should charge, why you should not. One thing that really irritates me to no end, consumers, all of you guys who are watching right now, please don't no show. You wouldn't do that at a restaurant. You wouldn't do that at your hairstylist. You wouldn't do that at Discount Tire. Don't do it for us in the industry. I mean, it's really, our time is valuable and so is yours. But I think that, in terms of charging, we did set up something on Square where we have the ability to charge if they no show. But what I have to say though is, what's interesting on virtual, if someone is actually going to take the steps to send me a picture of themselves, I do a lot of breasts, so they send a lot of topless photos, because I asked for their photos before, because I certainly am not going to, during this interview, if I was interviewing you, Cheryl, well, nice to meet you, Cheryl. Now, can you please take your clothes off? Right? I mean, that's a little personal. So I have them send the photos in beforehand, and that not only allows me, it makes them jump through a hoop, because if someone's not serious, generally they're not going to send in photos of their breast or even their face. I mean, they just won't take the time. But if they do that, then it gives me the chance right before the consult to actually evaluate their needs, to look at their photos and say, I think you're a good candidate for XYZ. And the funny thing is, these virtual consults, I mean, I book them for a half an hour. On average, these consults take about 12 minutes. And that's not rushed, but I've had the chance to do all the work beforehand. I've gone through their questionnaire. I've looked at all this stuff. I've looked at the photos. So before I even get on there, I've already pretty much examined the patient. So I've cut out a lot of that. And what's nice too is, this is one thing that people really talk about with virtuals. I work with a lot of patients in the military, and a lot of them have family members, a husband, a wife, what have you, that may be stationed somewhere else that may not be able to come in. With Zoom, and that's the platform that I use, with Zoom, they can log on, they can be right there in the consult. And the other thing too is we're still at a point where we're limiting the amount of patients that we can see in the office. So I'm not allowing family members to come back with, in the consult. So, sometimes they feel like they're kind of left out. With a Zoom call, they can be right there and they can be part of it. So what I would say is, I think we're in the horse and buggy days of Zoom. I think we're going to look back in about 2 or 3 years, and we're going to take the Zoom platform so far. We're going to build on it. It's going to be more engaging. It's going to be more endearing. It's going to be more personal. But I really think this is the no looking back. I mean, this is the point when Henry Ford revealed his car, and you had some people standing on the sidelines saying, "Well, I can't wait until we're back to, riding a horse again." Well, sweetheart, it ain't going to ever happen again. It's times have changed, and we need to change with them. It's kind of like what happened with 9/11. We said things are going to go back to normal. Travel was never the same, and what has changed now with COVID, it's the same thing. And we just have to look at, instead of sitting around and saying, woe is me, it's, what is the opportunity in this? I have one of my favorite sayings is times of great crisis are also times of great opportunity. And therein lies the opportunity. You have to look at change as being something that if you lean into it, you don't flinch. You're not like a boxer, okay? Or you're like a boxer, I should say. When boxers throw a punch, a good boxer doesn't flinch back, they lean into it. And that's the same thing with us in business. And in the age of COVID, we are leaning into these things, and we're accepting the fact that business is now forever changed.
Yeah, and I think we all feel the same way. Working from home, people are looking at themselves on Zoom. They're looking at their hair, they're looking at their skin, and they're, saying, okay, maybe I need more work. Maybe I need to get more stuff. So I really think that your industry, which is the whole med spa, plastic surgery, dermatology, wellness industry, will continue to grow. Yes, you have to see less patients, so you have to figure out how to make that up. So sometimes it's raising your prices, or figuring out maybe working on a weekend, or having some other income, adding some new profit centers, maybe with estheticians or nurses, as you and I briefly talked about. But one of the things that you talked about that was interesting before was, being sensitive. So I think being sensitive to the patient's needs. One of the things that come to mind right away for me is patient financing options. Making it affordable to everybody. And I know that you offer many, options, and I think that that's great. I think it's important that people know that upfront, because even if they have money, doesn't mean necessarily they're going to spend it. So, when we discussed it, I guess it's one of the things I would like you to maybe mention is, is it really that you're being proactive in your office about it and bringing it up, or you're waiting for somebody to react to ask you if you have patient financing options so they can afford to do the Botox and filler or the facelift, including, the neck or whatever, whatever you're seeing in your practice? I'd be curious to know that.
Right. And I think you hit on a really important topic. Patient financing is here to stay, and love it or hate it. And some of us, feel it kind of works with the practice, and you can work against a practice with respect to, the amount of fees taken out. But I think that, there are newer patient financing platforms that are actually looking at that and saying, a few things. One, how can we reduce the hit to the practice? And two, how can we also extend the reach for patients who might not have the best credit? Because, again, love it or hate it, financing is really is here to stay. And it really is important because, I have patients that come in and spend, $400 or $500 on Botox. I have patients that come in and spend 30, 35, $40,000, on a surgical procedure. So there's a wide range. And, I can't just expect people to all of a sudden come up with, $30,000 out of their checking account. A lot of us don't just have that sitting around. So we try to be as sensitive as possible. And we don't look down on patients that finance. I mean, I finance a lot of things myself. So we try to make things accessible to patients. And to your question, do we bring it up? We gauge it with the patient. We talk to the patient. We say, how would you like to pay for this? Do you, we have some patients who put it on a credit card and they earn the miles. I mean, that's a smart way if you can do that, if you have a large enough limit. We have some patients that are like, look, I'm going to finance and I'm going to get that 1 year, 1 year interest free, and I'm just going to pay it off. And now I've used someone else's money for a year. That's really smart too. I think the most important thing is being sensitive to patients and not judging. That's one thing I learned early on. Never, ever, ever assume that someone can or cannot afford a procedure. I mean, I've had patients walk in, I live in Denver, Colorado, and I'll never forget I had a couple that walked in and dirty jeans, cowboy boots, all kind of beaten up and so forth, came in for a very expensive procedure. I'm thinking, and I'm young and dumb. I'm not as young, and maybe I'm still as dumb, but they came in and I'm thinking, wow, maybe they can't afford it. Well, yeah, guess what? They were ranchers in Wyoming. They probably could buy me. I mean, it was kind of humorous, and it just showed me right there that it's very self-centered and very short-sighted to think that exactly what someone's circumstance is walking in. So we just assume everybody might need a little bit of help. If they do, great. If they don't, great. But we're willing to try to make the process as smooth for them and also as enjoyable for them as well too. I mean, that's what it comes down to with customer service. I mean, I emphasized that in my first book that you talked about, Beauty in the Business. It's all about really, respecting the customer, having the customer respect your staff, building a relationship. And when you do that, you don't get one-offs. Patients don't just come to you one time for Botox. They become lifelong friends. And I mean, I have patients that are coming in now, they're bringing in their daughters for breast augmentation. I did their augmentation 18, 19 years ago. And now, now their younger daughter is saying, hey, I'm going to go here because my mom went here. I mean, it's pretty cool. It makes you feel a little old, but it's pretty neat when you have that, so to speak, chain reaction of love, So
Well,
I love it.
I think building relationships is very important, and your personality lends itself to it. But I think some physicians or providers have to work a little harder at it. But I do think that the word of mouth marketing pays off because you don't have to do as much marketing. And the word of mouth marketing is the best way to market because the people come in, like you're saying, the daughters, they are more serious and they're ready to buy. Where there's a lot of people out there shopping, there's a lot of competition in Denver and all around your state. There's a lot of people looking and a lot of tire kickers. So that's why I asked before, do you charge for the consults? Because you are, allocating a half hour of your time, even if it only takes you 10 minutes.
Right.
I think that people have to understand, like you said, booking a restaurant and maybe giving a credit card. But it sounds like you do a lot of homework. You're looking at the photos. So they're actually filling out your intake form and they
Right.
actually becoming a patient of yours when you talk to them. So it's not just like a little bit of a consult to see if they are potentially a patient. You're assuming that, that they're already a patient. So I think you're doing it the right way. Should you be charging for it? Probably, because it is your time. And if you are putting a half hour aside, that is very valuable time.
Right.
You know, the text messaging programs like Solution Reach have, those are great. And I know you use that for communicating with patients. Do you use that when you do the virtual consults as well? Do you text them for their appointment?
I don't text them. This is all by email. So I get a request, they fill out a form. One thing I'm going to go back on real quick here is, you mentioned charging for consultations. For in-office, I do charge for consultations. For in-office, I do, but for virtuals, I don't. And one of the reasons that we kind of got to that, we're like, in reality, they only take me, like I said, about 15 minutes, maybe. I mean, some 10 minutes without rushing. And it really actually helps us too, because it first of all, it reduces the queue, the line that, people are waiting for. And it also too, I've had patients that I'm like, look, you know what? I just don't think you're going to be a good candidate for this. And, let me give you some names, and I haven't wasted their time. They haven't wasted mine. And it just makes it much more time efficient.
And how many patients are you actually closing when you do the consults virtually?
I haven't actually drilled down my closure rate, but I'd say it's probably about 70%. But what I would say though is, that doesn't sound like a great number, but what that also means too is, some of these patients are just, they don't realize that it's going to be this expensive. They think that they can get just a straightforward breast augmentation, but maybe they need a lift, and now they don't really want that, or they want liposuction. They really need a tummy tuck. It enables me to screen patients a lot more. And if I can screen them outside the office, because I usually do this after hours on weekends, I don't tend to do my virtuals during the day unless I have a slower day, which is usually pretty rare. I can do this really quickly, and honestly, it's like more of an additional feeder of new patients into my practice.
Which is great. And when you're doing
Right.
those consults, almost like we talk about, like if they're coming into your practice, they'd be talking to your patient coordinator. They might say, "Oh, here is my care credit card, and I'd like to use this in your practice." There might be a way you could tie in your patient financing option to your consult and close them and get a deposit right then and there, because right now there's all these options online where they don't have to come in and give you a card. Everything could be done virtually. So that's great. No touch, everybody wants something easy and fast. And I think, again, companies like Care Credit and some other companies out there, like Solution Reach that you might be working with, they have a lot of integration now. And a lot of things have changed in those companies that maybe you need to have your practice manager look into. Because I think there's a lot of new mergers, acquisitions going on in our industry as well, but also in all of the companies and the apps that we deal with. So I think those are important pearls. Going back to the sensitivity, we also had talked about, psychologically, a lot of people we're all impacted in one way or another. There's no question with COVID. Hit home, for a lot of us. And others are just stuck at home and, going a little crazy, but they're looking at themselves all the time. So whether they're looking in the mirror, they're thinking about the bathing suit weather and their body, or they're looking at the Zoom and looking at their faces and hair. How do you think psychologically it has helped to grow the aesthetic business?
Let me better understand your question. So are you talking about the telepresence being on Zoom, or do you think COVID, or what aspect, just so I can answer that?
I think when people are looking in the mirror more, or they're at home more, and their mates are looking at them, or their kids are looking at them, or they're looking at their bodies in the mirror because they're home more, or maybe they've gained the COVID 18 pounds, and they need to lose it. So I know psychologically people have been affected, and they are running faster, I think, to their providers, like yourself, for face, body. And I just wanted to know what you're seeing in Colorado.
Yeah, here's what I'd say. Going back to what you were talking about psychologically, I think it's about, what it comes down to is it's about control, because we all, no matter who you are, where you are across the world, we all during that, most of 2020, we lost control. We lost control over what we were able to do, where we were able to go, where we were able to eat, and so forth. And we were being told, you can't leave your house, you can't do this, you've got to wear a mask, and so forth. So I think a lot of people were like, look, I just need a little bit of control over something. And, if I can get control over the way I look, that's a huge step in the right direction. I think the other thing as well, too, is Zoom. Zoom, again, love it or hate it, I mean, I love Zoom as a platform. I hate Zoom in the sense that I hate looking at my neck. Every time I'm on these calls, I'm like, you can see I keep adjusting myself because I don't want to look at I'm 54. I'm still got a few good years. So, I just, I hate looking at that. But I think, that's very much of a continuation of what was happening before with people taking selfies. Well, all of a sudden we got this huge wave of people wanting jawline neck refinement, because when you take a selfie, you're usually taking it at the world's worst angles. And so it's making your neck look horrible, what have you. With COVID, I mean, there was a whole number of things, staying home, loss of control, that I think people just eventually had it. They're like, when we get out, we're going to do something to make ourselves feel better, look better. And here's the other thing we haven't talked about. A lot of people had vacations. They had saved up all this money. They were supposed to do all these great things. I mean, myself included, I had to cancel a bunch of speak, and I'm sure you did as well too. We're probably some of the same meetings. So I had to cancel a lot of work stuff. I had to cancel a lot of play stuff. And so patients come in and say, well, you know what? My husband and I were supposed to go to, I don't know what, Mexico, or we're supposed to go to Hawaii, what have you. And we had this chunk of money saved up. And I'm like, hey, if I can't travel, I'm gonna get my breast done. I've got this cash. I'm gonna get my breast done. If I can't go to a luau, hey, you know what? I'm gonna have a C cups. So, people basically use this as an opportunity. And they do the same thing with home improvement. This is just an offshoot of home improvement. This is body improvement. So I think COVID really drove home, what is really important, and what should we really be passionate about. One other thing I'd say as well too is keep in mind, and you probably know this, the lipstick factor. Okay, remember in the Great Depression, top selling things: alcohol, cigarettes, and the third, lipstick. Well, why lipstick? You couldn't even afford to eat. You're getting drunk, you're smoking, but you're putting on lipstick. Why? Again, it's about a sense of control. It's about looking beautiful, sitting in the deck chair of the Titanic. You want to, even though everything is kind of going, to hell in a handbasket around you, you want to actually look a little bit put together. So I think that's a lot of it now. We call it, we're a little nicer. We call it the COVID-15, but I don't know down in Boca that you guys may have gained 3 more pounds because of better food, but we're the COVID-15. And we've seen a lot of emphasis now on body contouring. Body contouring has become huge, because people they were probably eating what they shouldn't eat. They were probably like me, probably having a little too much Tito's here and there, because we're stuck at home. We couldn't go to the gym, so we couldn't work out. So there's a lot of things. I mean, it was really a maelstrom of change, and it wasn't just a slow change. This was an abrupt, right across the face, knock you back and take your breath away kind of change.
And you're lucky because you're in Denver, so it was only 2 months. But there's a lot of other states that, even New York to this day, almost everything is closed down. And if it's open, it's freezing. Right. They can't eat outside. Maybe there's 25 or 30% where they can eat. New York and New Jersey, maybe Connecticut, Massachusetts, where they can eat inside.
Right.
And COVID's pretty bad there. So, you had it easier. Can you imagine if it was that much longer? And there's places now where people still can't really do what they want to do. I mean, here in Florida, you in Colorado, we can do more, we can go out more. But, like you had snow today, and with snow, nobody's going out, nobody's rushing anywhere.
Right.
So, we were lucky. But when we talk about, trends and current trends and what's hot and what's not, what do you want to leave, what pearls do you have on that subject? And then we'll start to close up.
I think there's a number of trends that we're looking at, and it depends on in what area we're looking at. Surgery. We can talk about energy. We're called energy-based devices. We can talk about the injectables. Let's talk about the injectables first. I work a lot with industry, and have been really been blessed to be on a lot of panels that help kind of review some of this new technology. I can tell you, without getting into the nitty gritty, that biologics are really going to be the future wave of injectables. In other words, not just having fillers, okay, not just having toxins, but having delivery devices that are going to combine those with biologically active substances. They're going to help us restore things like collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, things that we lose as we age. And I'm really proud to be part of this because I remember 20 years ago when I was starting, I was literally like a dumb monkey injecting injecting filler. And I just remember, I was looking at these little lines of wrinkles, and I'm just looking very, very simplistically. Oh, there's a little wrinkle here, inject something in it. Now it's a very, very thoughtful approach. And I have to tell you, I mean, some of my colleagues that, get up on stage and show these non-surgical results, I'm blown away. I mean, there is some serious talent within this industry. It's really exciting to see this, not only what's available now, but what's potentially going to be there. As far as energy-based devices, I think the biggest thing coming out this year is we've got a device. We've got one device that is FDA approved for cellulite, which I think is going to hold some pretty significant promise. We have a new injectable. I'm involved with both of these companies. I think that surgery-wise, we've really started combining surgical procedures and the non-surgical, and really creating this combinative effect. So you'll hear the term combination therapy. It's basically taking a whole different number of things, energy-based devices, medical skincare, non-invasive procedures, fillers, toxins, what have you, and combining them in such a way that you create these results that it's not one, it's 1 + 1 = 3. I mean, you're really getting synergy. And I know that's a very overused term, but to me, it being in the industry now is very exciting. And being able to, to talk about to patients about the things that are coming. This is one of the reasons too, why I've been so blessed to have been able to interact with, people like yourself, other thought leaders across the United States and also across the world, and really get more of even a global idea of what's going on, watching things come out of South Korea. If you think we've got great stuff, South Korea is probably 5 to 10 years ahead of us. I mean, it's amazing looking at what's going on in Europe, look at what's going on in South America. I mean, it's really exciting to be able to travel there and look at these things and go, you know what? I'm going to bring back some of this information back to my practice. And it's enabled me to really stay far ahead of my local competition, which, most of these guys are learning from meetings, which I hate to say it, sorry guys that hold meetings, but the standard society meetings are about 5 years outdated. It's the same old talks. So, I've kind of learned where to get my information and, being able to do these things, I mean, really, and to peek into the future of aesthetic medicine, it really is exciting. It really is exciting. There's great things ahead.
And I'm in agreement with you. The biologics, I'm getting involved in more and more. The artificial intelligence, I think those are some of the key things. And you and I should talk offline about that and some of the things that I'm getting involved with. But I do want to thank you for today. I know I've kept you longer and you're terrific. We could probably do a series of these to talk about everything that we're doing and bring out your next new book, which is exciting. And today's handout is decision-making process in the process of prospective patients. And all of my articles have been published. And so it's a published article that we will hand out. But I do look forward to seeing you again one day soon in person, as well as getting back online and doing another webinar with you on a specific topic. And maybe it be biologics. We can probably talk about multiple things. So I thank you for your time tonight. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you. Totally appreciate it. So public relations strategies, we didn't talk about that tonight, but the truth is that public relations is different than marketing. So it's very important that you become a part of it and you can become a leader. It could be a lead generation for you. So we have information in the Beautifully Profitable book. It's available to you with the discount on beautifulforever.com with the discount code profit. So it's 50% off of the ebook, or you can just go on and buy a hardcover book online or on Amazon. But Beautifully Profitable is in its 6th edition. And we do talk about all of these topics. and expanding your profit centers. So if you want a complimentary session with me via Zoom or on the phone, I'm happy to do that as well. I look forward to doing that. But stay on top of your marketing as well as your public relations. Don't forget about that, even though it wasn't mentioned tonight. And save the date. We have some really interesting speakers coming up. There's a lot more. We have two here. Well, talking about Jake, he's amazing. He runs Dr. Chino Bay's office. He's a practice manager in Fort Lauderdale. And he's terrific. So I'm very excited about interviewing him. And then, talking about the top skincare professional in the industry, one of them is Mona Sappenfield. And so on March 9th, we'll be talking to her. And she does a lot of things for her state, as well as for the estheticians and for all kinds of programs. So we have some other physicians coming up. We have some other corporate coming up. I look forward to you telling us what you want to learn more about, asking us your questions, and how we can help you to grow your practice to be more successful. So Cheryl at beautifulforever.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. You can find us on social media. And thank you for joining us tonight.